Welcome to Automate Your Agency. Every week, we bring you expert insights, practical tips, and success stories that will help you streamline your business operations and boost your growth. Let's get started on your journey to more efficient and scalable operations.
All right, Alane. So when it comes to AI and automation, which obviously is all the rage right now, one of the things that we hear a lot is how long is it going to take? And basically, people are looking at this as just this transactional thing. So, hey, help me get automation, and then I never want to talk to you again.
or even if they want to do it themselves, that they never have to touch it again.
Well, yeah, great point. I'm going to build this automation. I'm never going to have to touch it again. Obviously, nothing will ever go wrong. And I would say, even for us, it took us a long time to realize this is more like developing software than
Mhm.
it is process automation, systems and processes, right? Once you build a
Mhm.
system, for the most part, that system is going to run. But automation and AI tools, it's a little bit different because you're building part of the system, but it's leveraging technology. So things right at the beginning that I always try to set expectations for are what happens when there's an error? What happens when it gets past data that it wasn't expecting? What happens when an API is down? Like
Mhm.
if we're connecting to, say, QuickBooks or HubSpot, those APIs go down every once in a while. What happens, right? So it's a lot
Right.
like software where you're going to build something and then you wouldn't necessarily fire your entire development team once you build it.
Mhm.
You would obviously need people there to help you continue.
Some type of maintenance and support associated with what was built. And I'll say too that this is one of the things that I'm covering a lot on potential client calls or first calls is this expectation of once it's done, it's done. And that's only 90% correct. Yes, there's a reason why we're using automation and AI, right? And companies are greatly decreasing the amount of manual work. But that doesn't mean that it's set it, forget it forever.
That's right. That's right.
And there's
Yeah.
there's definitely this maintenance piece to it. And now sometimes too, it's not necessarily that the technology is changing or the API went down, but that your process needs to be changed.
Great point. Great point. I
Things
was
are not
just thinking about that.
stagnant. You don't want to be stagnant. You want to make improvements and changes and you need to have if and the two things to look at is do you have somebody internally that's going to be doing that or are you working with a partner? And that's why these relationships really are thinking about having something in place so that you can make sure that your automation, the money that you've already invested into putting this automation is going to continue working.
Yep. Yep. I mean, you bring up a great point because honestly, I think process changes are even more important than just catching errors and API calls that might go bad or something like that. Because essentially, once you put something like this in place, you're going to want to have the ability to refine it, to optimize it, to iterate on it. Or maybe it's just 2 months down the road and you're like, boy, I wish it could do this. Or wouldn't it be nice if we could now accept files for this instead of just text? And you're going to need an expert. You're going to need somebody still there that knows that whole process, that knows that system, that knows the automation to be able to call on to say, hey, this is where it is. So when you think about it like a transactional thing, you're really limiting yourself into like, I only want it this way forever.
Mhm. Oh, Micah, you just said something so important that I want to dig in deeper is that somebody that's familiar with what was built and why having a long-term relationship with the builder is so important. And that doesn't mean that you need to be on a max package with that person that built it or the company that built it, but having familiarity with what was already built is so important. So if you internally built some automation and then that person leaves and then you've got to retouch on it, or you cancel your contract with your partner that built it for you and then things go wrong and nobody's been a part of that for 6 months, then you're also looking at time to get in back in there, learn what
Yeah.
was built. And if you stay consistent with somebody in the system, then making changes is so much faster for you as a company.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think even just mindset wise and how I would say our dream clients, the way that we would I think the way that we best engage with clients are when clients come to us and they say, I'm looking for a strategic partner. I want somebody that's going to be there to help with the growth. And not just because it's a long term client with us, that's
Mhm.
great. But it's also because they already have gone through likely this pain point and they want somebody that can be there for the ride, that can be there
Mhm.
as they grow. Because as they grow by putting these systems in place, they're going to need new systems. They're going to be needing additional systems. They're running into new problems that they didn't have before because they added growth. And so, like,
Mhm.
having that mindset of, hey, I don't want to pay the least amount and get this done the quickest because then I'm just stuck with a minimal investment, but I can't do anything with it. Versus, hey, let me budget for some real solutions here to really help my
Mhm.
business grow.
Yeah, and having a maintenance support option with whatever partner that you're working with is so important, and we didn't do that early on. When we
No,
first
we
started
didn't.
building it, we learned that this is not a transactional thing where you build it and set it and forget it, and so we had to learn that this wasn't a set it and forget it, that we needed to have a support thing along the way so that once we did all the heavy lifting and the automations were working, that this the client still needed support along the way to make sure that things stay running, that changes can be made. And so we incorporated that later on just from learning through our own experience owning and running this company. So whether you work with us or another company is you really want to make sure this is a piece of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I would say, at the beginning of last year, figuring this is 2025 now, we did change our pricing models, we changed our revenue models, we honed it over the years, and we added a lot of flexibility. And so I would even say for anybody looking for a partner to help them do this kind of stuff, a couple key things that I would look for, even if you never worked with us, I would still give you this advice, which is make sure that they have the ability to allow you to, upgrade and downgrade at any time. There's going to be probably some upfront time. If they say it's going to take 2 weeks, don't believe them. There's generally going to be times that it's going to take a lot longer. And it's just, they've got to learn your systems, they got to learn your workflows, they've got to understand how things work. So for the most part, these are bigger projects. So there's going to be some upfront time. But then once you get into it, is it flexible? So depending on what you're working with them, are you going to be able to upgrade? Are you going to be able to downgrade? Is it just hourly? What maintenance programs do they offer? Do they want to stay there? There's plenty of providers out there that just want to build something transactional and move into the next one. We've never been that. We've always wanted to support our clients, but those would be the things that I would say you should look into.
Yeah, I think one of the other questions too, when it comes down to support, is how the automations were built. And Mike, I'm thinking of, several of our clients came to us because they had originally gone to a freelancer. The freelancer wrote, it was spaghetti, what we call spaghetti code. But when you're using an automation platform like Zapier or Make, the whole idea is to not have to write a lot of custom code. You really want to use webhooks and APIs and pull those things together rather than on top of that writing custom code. And so these are some questions you want to ask because if they are writing custom code along with the automation, the support ongoing is going to be more expensive for you because then you're having to edit code and you're not just editing integrations.
And I would even piggyback. I totally agree, Elaine, but I would piggyback on that as well and say, if like, because we've seen this so many times where it comes from a freelancer or somebody else, and they don't think about optimization. They don't think about writing it for maintenance. Their goal in their mind was like, hey, I'm getting paid X for this, so I'm gonna do it in the least amount of time possible. So if that means it's running 3 times the operations than it should, yeah, that's fine. If that means it's super hard to maintain, yeah, that's okay too. Right. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of
And hey, if
incentives
problems happen,
around,
then they're just going to build more hours. So,
yep,
or I get to
that's
build them more
cool.
hours.
Yep. So, you definitely want to make sure that whoever is building this with quality in mind. not just speed, not just transactional, you know, not just the quantity of like, how many operations is this going to take? All right, cool. Good enough. We're
Mhm.
done. Right. There's, again, it's so much like software that if you write crappy code, if you write crappy stuff and it's full of bugs, well, you don't want your systems that are running your sales, marketing, operations, integrations to be full of bugs. You want it to work seamlessly.
Mhm. I think that was such a change that I had to understand early in the business because I'm not a developer. And, I at our previous company that we ran, I built all of our connections myself and they weren't great, but they functioned and they worked well. But looking at this for a company and building things out, it is definitely similar to a development style. When you really want the customizations and it to work right is having that because you're working with APIs, you're working with webhooks, all of this development terminology that you and I, if we weren't in this world and we hadn't built software, I would never even associate those things.
No, me
It's not
neither. Me
until
neither.
now of how many of these that we've built and how many amazing automations that we've seen is like, wow, this is exactly like building software with puzzle pieces.
Yep. Yep, it's exactly right. And when we're building, right, we think about things, and again, this is why transactionary mindsets don't really work for this kind of stuff, because when we're building, we're really solutioning for this. We're really looking through and say, is this the best way to do it? Is there a faster way to do it? Is there a more streamlined process we could use? Is this the right workflow? Does
Mhm.
this work for the users? How easy is this going to be able to be trained on? All of
Mhm.
those actual business questions, is what we're looking at. We're not just going, hey, all right, cool. You want to automate A to B? Awesome. Most people can do that in a zap. But when you get into a complex system, when you get into complex workflows, that's where, I think we get really excited about it because we're able to go, okay, we've got a client onboarding process. We've got a hiring process. We've got, these custom workflows, whatever it might be, right?
Mhm.
Uh, how do we simplify this? How do we build something that's scalable? How do we train? How do we document it? Those are
Mm.
all the types of things that you're going to look for in a provider.
Yeah, and why I think it's so beneficial to work with a team on this and not necessarily I don't want to say anything badly about a freelancer because there's some amazing freelancers out there. And internal teams, some internal teams have really technical savvy people. But I'll tell you what the benefit of working with a team is that you have multiple people that get to work on that project for you. And so, like today, we had 2 kickoff calls, 3 of our team members on a call with their team. And that doesn't include the solutioners that we have, that'll also work on it, that have a plethora of other experience on how things work. Is that we get to make suggestions that they never even thought was possible because we've done this so many times in so many different ways. And like one lady on the call, she's like, "You are blowing my mind right now. Like, I didn't even know that was possible." And I'm like, "You really need to say what your wishes are because if you maybe we can't do everything and that's okay, but if you're working with somebody that maybe has some experience in a couple of your platforms, you are going to get a very standard result. But if you're working with an experienced team and multiple team members, I promise you are going to have a 10x automation than you would with a singular person just because you have so many more minds working on it that have the experience of building this.
Yeah, I love this. I mean, even last week, we did a couple calls with some clients in between the holiday breaks. And one of them, right there, an apparel brand. And one of the people on our team on the call is a former Golden Gloves female boxer who owned her own gym. And so the relationship between a fighting apparel brand and somebody who has fought, it was like, okay, now we're talking the talk. Now, like instant credibility, it totally gelled. And to your point, Alane, if you hire a freelancer, you get one person's background, one person's knowledge. If you hire somebody on your staff, you get one person's background, you get one person's knowledge. You can generally hire a team for less than the cost of a full-time person and
Mhm.
get multiple backgrounds, multiple strategists, multiple solution ideas, and even maybe multiple people that have been in your industry, have done projects in your industry, can relate to exactly what you're doing. Where it's like, how would you find that with just one You would have to have the ultimate unicorn hire. And the chance of that
Mhm.
is so slim.
And so expensive, that
Yeah,
kind of
that too.
person.
That too. But it kind
Is
of, it's, we talk about this a lot with prospects because what we offer is less than the cost of a full time employee. And you don't have to pay us benefits, and you get an entire expert team with really wide ranging backgrounds, but all focused on AI, automation, scaling, building systems, scalability, training, documentation, you name it. Just a no brainer.
Yeah. I think the other part that plays into this with companies is that they come up with the idea of something that they want automated, and it's 1 to 3 things. You have an entire company of processes. Think past 1 to 3 things. Everything in your company is a process. New employee onboarding, new client onboarding, client management, employee reviews, ongoing maintenance. Like everything in your company is some sort of process. So if you're coming in and thinking, "Oh, I'm just gonna do this one thing and it's gonna change my whole entire business," it's gonna have a very little impact than looking at it as, I can go to every department and work through automating something in this or streamlining something in this and getting some systems in place. Now that is where the impact is gonna happen in your company.
Absolutely. And if you don't feel like your company is full of processes right now, listen to some of our previous episodes because we go in depth on when is the right time to create processes, how do you create them, how do you document them, how do you diagram them. So we got plenty of resources in our other episodes for that. Just a little self promotion.
Well, and the other thing too is we have an episode on like how do you prioritize which ones, because you might not have, maybe you love everything that we're talking about and you want to start automating things in your company, but you do have a limited budget, so you do want to prioritize which ones are going to make the biggest impact. And so that would be another one to listen to, because you want to have a roadmap essentially of, let me start here, let me get these things in place. We can drop down, be in maintenance for a little bit, give me another 4 months, and then we can kick things back off again. And so, but thinking about your business as a system instead of as a transactional thing for yourself, because that things never stop in your business. Because if you stop, then that's when you start seeing things decline. If you want to keep a healthy business, you need to be evolving, changing, keeping things moving forward.
Yep. I couldn't have said it better myself. All right. So to kind of bring this one to a close, our whole point that we want to convey on this one is when you're thinking about AI, when you're thinking about automation, when you're thinking about streamlining your business, don't think transactionally in the sense that it's, I'm going to build it, I'm going to forget about it, I never have to touch it again. Think about this as an ongoing part of your business that you want to constantly improve, and you're going to want the right partners there to help you along the way.
All right. And we'll link to those episodes in the show notes. And we look forward to talking with you all next week.